program tonight. Kulano Canada was founded in 2014. We are officially registered as the Canadian Friends of Kulano because for over 40 years there's been an organization in the US working with dispersed, isolated, almost lost and forgotten communities of Jewish life all over the world. There is probably no country on planet Earth that doesn't have a Jew or a Jewish story or a Jewish community. And I challenge any one of you to Google the name of a country and write Jew beside it and you'll get a story. So Kulano Canada came into being to work along with the US group to help these dispersed communities, isolated communities, to connect with mainstream Jewish life. So, many of you will not know the stories of the Chinese Jews, but there have been Jews in China for almost 2,000 years. But I had the pleasure a couple of years ago of going to Kaifeng and actually carrying a small Torah to the Jews of Kaifeng. So I know they're there, I know they're practicing. And at the same time, in that visit, on behalf of Kulano, I was able to go to Nanjing and meet Professor Xu Xin, who is a remarkable, remarkable individual as a person and as a scholar. He was the founder and is the director today of the Department of Jewish and Israel Studies at Nanjing University. He was the first president of the Association of Professors of Jewish Studies in China. And I think the only reason there are professors of Jewish studies is because of Xu Xin to begin with, because he's trained most of those scholars to go on and get their PhDs and teach others. He's one of the translators of the Encyclopedia Judaica, if you wish to receive it in Mandarin. It's a project that took 3 years and is a remarkable piece of work. He's produced other books, 2 of which are for sale at the front, and I can assure you that they'll find them interesting and informative and charming. There's one there of the legends of the Jews of China. He has been to Israel more times than most Jews, and he is leading another contingent of Chinese folks to Israel in October. That would be the tour to go on, I think. I'm thrilled that he's here to join us tonight, Professor Xu Xin.
Eric Tove. Thank you, Andrew, and very happy to be here, and which make it possible by that Kulano Canada. And so this is the 4th one since I came 3 weeks ago, taught in Canada. So this tonight we talk about, let's get this started. So this is a topic I was given. This is of course within my research field. As Andrew just introduced, I've been in this field for over 30 years. I've been a professor at Nanjing University for 43 years. I'm not a young man anymore. I'm in my 70s. So that's a long time ago. But anyway, today we're going to take this opportunity to talk about Chinese policy towards Judaism. Okay, what does it mean? I prepared a kind of abstract to let you know what I'm going to cover. Because China is the only country in the Far East in which Jews have continuously lived for over 1,000 years. What, if any, has been official policies of China towards Jews and their religious practice? So this is something interesting. This talk intends to give an overall examination of Chinese policy from a historical perspective towards Jews and Judaism. So that's chiefly what I'm going to do. And of course, I have to clarify Chinese Judaism. Here we use Chinese Judaism refer to the religious practice and the life of those Jews who have lived in China or are now living in China. It covers not Jews in Canada, not Jews elsewhere, but dealing with Jews in China. Because Chinese religious policy actually dealing with religions in China, not religion in the world. So there were lots of misunderstandings why China don't now recognize Judaism. There's no question of recognize. But the point is, today there were no Chinese as Chinese Jews. You see, later we'll cover it this different way, but today we have to admit no Chinese or as practice Judaism in mainland China. You see, so that policy will not cover this way. However, you see, in this talk, we do talk about what Chinese policy towards Jews or Judaism, especially those people who are in China. The background, we have to understand that China, to begin with, is more or less a secular culture, secular country. You see, this is different from Judaism or Jewish people. Though we believe there are many things in common between Chinese and Jewish. You see, there are many things in common. But one of the major differences is Jewish culture or civilization more or less focused on Judaism. Judaism is core part of Jewish civilization, if we could use that word. But Chinese culture is more or less secular. Well, Western people would say, how about Confucianism? It is, Confucianism is the older West civilization in China, but Confucius or Confucianism never deal with religion, as a matter of fact. Confucius himself always said, I don't care about deity, because I have not energy to dealing with human society. So Confucianism really talk about relationship between or among human beings. So this doesn't cover religion. When Confucianism become a teaching of China, the country more or less we consider is a secular country. This is very, very important because of this. So religion never plays a leading role in Chinese society, except that Taoism. All other major religions in China now are imported, not originally from China. For instance, in China we have Buddhism, which originally came from India. You see, and we have Christianity, not from China. Islam, not from China either. You see, Taoism is native Chinese religion. Unfortunately, Taoism in Chinese history never got upper hand. Today, or in history, very small group of people believe in Taoism. So that's a major differences. So among Chinese, and the attitude towards religion is different. So was Chinese government. See, therefore, there being no policy or no consistent policy towards religion. If we talk in history, there's no consistent. Of course, if you think Confucianism is religion, that's another story. That become the major teaching of Chinese. But as I said, we believe in China religion. Confucianism never treated as religion. Okay, it's a way of life. Of course, we say Buddhism, Judaism is a way of life of Jewish people, right? In many ways. So that sense can be compared, but there are big differences. So Chinese Buddhism or Confucianism never covered any deity. So then, what Chinese policy means? I use guidelines. You see, this is probably most scholars, people who study Chinese policy towards religion, historically speaking, we say respecting their religion and change not their custom and tradition. This is more or less. Because in Chinese, I put some Chinese, for those who understand Chinese, it says 尊其教而不异其俗. This is something we remember that. So I put it in English, respecting their religion, change not their custom and tradition. So, and this has become kind of guideline for Chinese government throughout dynasty. You see, and unless you are against government, government leave you alone, no matter what kind of religion it is. So there were all kinds of religion came to China, and some died, disappeared, some still exist, like Christianity, Islam become, or Buddhism become the biggest religion in China. But there are many other religions came to China, finally disappeared. You see, but this is Chinese, we say a policy. So therefore, if we consider this guideline as a policy or major Chinese policy towards religion, so it applies towards all ethnic groups and their faith for at least last 1,000 years. It should naturally cover Jews and Judaism in principle, regardless it was made specifically towards Judaism or not. This is policy not made towards Jews actually. All kind of, in China, I use ethnic group, ethnics, because normally different ethnic group has different faiths. You see, like in China we call folk religion, or really popular religion practiced by people, especially a different ethnic group. But it doesn't matter. That policy respecting the religion, change not their custom and tradition, is a policy. You see, so towards Jews, we should do this in this way. Next, I'm going to analyze this in a different way. So, accordingly, the governments have instituted the lenient practices towards the Jews, permitting them to live a traditional life within the dynasty territory, or practice normal religious activities, including building house of worship. You see, that's part of things, especially before communists took over, we eventually has a kind of formal state policy. But previously, that's what I said, in tradition, there was this kind of guideline. That's why I believe one would find out without too many difficulties when examining history that the liberal policy, as I said, was well reflected in the case of Kaifeng Jewry. Now, for instance, the Kaifeng Jewish Stele recorded that the Song Dynasty, by the way, Song Dynasty is the time Kaifeng started to have Jews, or Jews came to that city and settled down and lived there with Jewish life. That's how it comes. That the Song Dynasty emperor gave permission for Jews to live in then capital of China and to follow their own custom and tradition. You see, the Stele, who was considered the first-hand historic document from that community, handed down. You see, which tells us. I showed, this is actually, I call it Jewish Community Center. Sometimes people say this is synagogue. Okay, it could be synagogue, but it's much larger than a synagogue because sanctuary was on the back. Later on, I'll show that. This is a sketch, or drawn or sketched by Jesuits who visited Kaifeng while this compound still exists. So this is another one in theory. This is the outside, the whole compound. This is the sanctuary, how it looks like. You see, this has become historic document because it's important for us to figure out how Kaifeng Jews practice their Judaism. Okay, this is the inside, the layout, and of course, probably you are more familiar with this picture than previous two illustrations. You see, this is a synagogue model in the Jewish Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv University, Israel. You see, I took many Chinese, went there. As a matter of fact, when I made my first trip to visit Israel in 1988, I was taken to there to see this. They show us, you see, we have this piece of history. They even printed what they had about the Kaifeng Jewish community to see the connections. So this is a sanctuary. We could see, of course, this is Chinese architecture, traditional architecture we call big roof, but this is a synagogue. You see, you could see the local government was said even to have this policy, strangers and carriers of pork cannot pass near the synagogue. That's what's in historic documents. It's a local government policy, make it known to people because respect Jewish custom, tradition. You don't eat pork. Those who carry pork were not allowed. This is really show, we say, respect their religion. You see, when they think that's their religion, you respect it. To make this policy, I don't think anywhere else in this world make this policy, right? To tell people don't to do it. You see, that is, so Kaifeng Jews enjoy the freedom of religion, and their customs were respected by Chinese authority by and large. You see, this is just example. Now I show you this. This is a map drawn in the beginning of 20th century, 1910. You see here is the mark, all Chinese, but this side of synagogue. This is street. And Andrew was in Kaifeng, you know, see the locate, that's a community located in that area. And even though at that time, community of Kaifeng by and large will fall apart, but the synagogue was still remain standing. The only finally sold in 1914, but before it was there. So they the first time make a map of the city, they mark the site of synagogue. You see, so people know that this is a different group of people. We consider they are different ethnic group. You see, you could think like this way, but give them kind of position in the world. This is, of course, we talk about Jews who came to China before modern time. By that I mean before 1840, because 1840 is the demarcation year. China start to change from pre-modern country to modern country, because the main reason for those who understand Chinese history was that China was closed society by and large in history, especially from 14th century to 19th century. It was closed society. You see, very few even businessmen could go to China to do business. You see, there were only some missionaries who came to China, and it was closed society. But when in 1840 China had a war with Britain, and Britain wanted to do business with China, China was not allowed anything imported later on except opium, because China, as a big country, agricultural country, always self-sufficient. They believe self-sufficient. We don't need anything from abroad, but the international community, even in the 18th century, they want some Chinese commodities, silk, tea, etc. But China did not buy anything from any other countries. When British become imperial state, they want old world market, they look for China. China refused to buy things. They said, all things we have. But later on they realized that one commodity China never had. If we could get Chinese addicted or hooked to it, they have a market. That's the opium. That's how Britain actually start to ship opium to China, and finally got a problem. And because the Chinese government want to ban the selling of opium, Britain want to have Chinese market. They had a war we call the Opium War. The Opium War, unfortunately, China was defeated. And then as the consequences was that China had to open store for first British to do business with China, then all other Western powers, and they followed. Of course, among those who came to China in the second half of 19th century, there were Jews, because Jews already become international merchants, especially in British India. You see, the Sassoon family, a lot of Jewish family from Baghdad, and already moved because of persecution. They moved from Baghdad to India, worked under a British Indian company. You see, so when British Indian company looking for China, the market open Chinese door, they went to China too. So those Jews come to China. China has another group of Jews. They have to deal with this, right? This is become the policy, what we called Chinese policy. Previously, that was the Poles who came to China early time. But by this time, there's new group of people, and when they come, you see, we said, I particularly use this period because this we call Republican period. It's the period when Chiang Kai-shek in power. Okay, chiefly, we say this, because that was China start to form a kind of different modern policy, including what we talk about Chinese policy towards religion is not really to begin with set up by Chinese communists, but at that time was set up by nationalist government. Today we say Chiang Kai-shek's government, though Chiang Kai-shek came to power 10 years later, but that's kind of process determines the policy. But in any case, so during that period of time, over 40,000 Jews came to China. Of course, many I use West Asia. You see, means Baghdad and today's like Palestinian, Egypt, all these Jews who came to China from that region, or Semitic Jews in a way, came to China. And also we have Jews from Europe. Europe means Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe being like Russian, Tsars Russian, and later on during the Holocaust, Jewish refugees, about 20,000 went to China, survived the Holocaust. So this is how it means, all this group of people. Okay? So when they come, what's the carry Chinese authorities or government carry out the same relaxing policy towards Jews and religion. Jews received permission to stay, to establish organizations, and to build synagogue or Jewish life, including religious life, and that's how chiefly we look at that issue. That's why those who've been to China see many buildings today like this. This is in Harbin. You see, we use this because Ashkenazi Jews who went to Harbin, this is the synagogue they built in 1909, completed. You see, so this is building still there. You see, today was renovated in a way. So that's with permission, you were able to purchase land to build a synagogue. Today it may become difficult, but at that time it's easy. Not one, this one in Harbin, and one in many more in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, in Tianjin, in Qingdao. Many Chinese cities had Jews living in society. So this is another look, original way to look at it from different perspectives. You see, this is over 100 years old by Russian Jews. And then we come to religion. I mentioned this. Chinese government's official policy to endorse Zionism. Zionism, Jews, Jewish Palestine, and Judaism is same thing, right? More or less, the Jews wanted a home, re-established country of its own, and many early Chinese want to build up Jewish life there. You see, Jewish life is more important than to have a state. Even Adam Ham had that argument. You see, so that's what the Jewish tradition become more important. When Jew lived in diaspora, he believed Jews lost many characteristics. You see, so we better have his own country or go back to your original land. Your idea can be further flourished. That's the way. That's why we say Zionism. So Chinese policy towards Zionism become very, very important. So I use it here. You see. The example is the Chinese modern father or father of modern China, Dr. Xu Xin, makes specific statement to support Zionist movement when he was contacted by those Jews, or basically, to be more exact, Sephardic Jews who were in Shanghai to do business, and wrote him a letter, informed him about Balfour Declaration. You see, he wrote back as his response, and also on behalf of Chinese government to recognize or endorse Zionist movement. That's what he said in the letter. You see, when this becomes the policy, you see, Chinese you put you have a right way to dealing with the Jews, you have to deal with their faith. Because even then, Jews will get emancipated in a way. After Haskalah movement, Jews will start to have secular Jews who do not really believe in religion or not religious anymore, but still among Jews, Judaism or Jewish tradition, custom was still important. You see, the way I came here tonight, I talked with my host Richard. I said, in China we said every Jew, whether he is secular or not, but they do practice many tradition or custom of Judaism. For instance, even Communist Party of Israel, he will have son on 8 days breed. So that's to have a breed is one of the major law of mitzvah of Judaism to begin with. So that's why they have to do it. You know. So in China, we try to use this example to convince government leaders what Judaism become very, very important. You see, for Jewish people. And this now we moved. So during that period, first half of 20th century, under Republic of China or Kuomintang's rule, National Party rule, relaxing policy is practiced. There's no restrict for Jews to say you cannot do that, you cannot do that. No. You see, now after communists took over the power, you see, we could say from some examples, newly established government, especially in which I use local government, for instance in Shanghai, in Harbin, and where they had Jewish community people there then, that still deal with that. They know they have to deal with that. So their policy at that time was allow them to do what they used to do. You see, that's what I mean. So, for instance, in Shanghai, we allowed Jews to establish a council of Jewish people to overlooking their everyday life, including synagogue, including other issues related with the Jewish people in Shanghai. So, for instance, to provide matzah for Pesach. You see, it is something later on Shanghai Jewish community also made matzah during Passover to Tianjin, so that people in Tianjin could have matzah for Pesach. You see, this is our government policy, we could say, in such a way. And also, Jewish religion was recognized at the time by the government as one of the approved religion in cities Shanghai, Tianjin, Harbin. For instance, Shanghai new synagogue remained open, and Jewish rituals were continuously observed until it was closed in 1956. Of course, it was closed because after or even before communists took over the power, most Jews who were in China before that time start to leave. So I mentioned, if I give you example, how many Jews were there before communists took over, before end of Second World War in China, I mentioned 40,000 Jews were there, right? But all after the war, they start to leave. Of course, there are many reasons. But in any case, after communists took over the power, there were still a few thousand Jews remaining in China. From 40,000 to a few thousand, you see, majority left. That's many reasons, but that's the reality. So for this, and then by 1956, the remaining Jews start to leave, because every year almost half of the Jewish population of that remaining number left goes very fast. You see, so by 1956, for instance, in Shanghai, not enough people to support synagogue. Finally, they sold it. And in Tianjin, in 1957, Jewish organization Kehila Tianjin published article in paper saying we are no longer here. We only have 6 people. The Kehila no more. You see, they all left. You see, that's officially declared they are not in Tianjin anymore. But the building was there. You see, even today, we still could see the building served as a synagogue in Tianjin. But this is the Harbin synagogue remained open until 60s. Harbin is one because there was many Russian Jews who did not leave China. Among those Jews who were in China, and Russian Jews was the last group who left, because many of them, if they couldn't go to third country, either remain in China, go back to Soviet Union. In their eyes, not much difference. The big difference in China, they don't experience any anti-Semitism. You see, other than that, all communist rule. So they remain. But unfortunately, in the beginning of 1960s, China and Russia were disputed and openly. And China, at that time, in northeast China, near Harbin, there were 500,000 Russians. And the Chinese government asked them to leave. And among them was few hundred Jews who finally left Harbin. And that's the end of it in many cases. So the fact shows that Judaism practiced by those alien, I use the word alien Jews because like today expat, they never become Chinese citizens. Because China, historically speaking, does not really have a nationalization policy. We cannot say no other people become Chinese national, but it's far and few. As far as I know, probably over 20 people really can become Chinese citizens. You see, so I use the word aliens, so they are not Chinese. You see, in China, and so because of this, Judaism never listed in China as a religion in China. You have to understand this. That is what I start. I talk about it. You see, because there was no Chinese citizens as a Jew. How people would ask, how about Kaifeng Jews? They believe even time they long time ago were assimilated or acculturated. At least they don't have that practice. No more synagogue. You see, no more practice by people who has Chinese citizenship, except the foreign people or aliens. By then, in the early 60s, almost all gone. You see, the change of course later, and change later was when Chinese Communist chief Chairman Mao died. China's policy relaxed. It's including policy towards Judaism, towards religion. During Cultural Revolution, the last 10 years of Mao's life, that China carried a radical policy towards religion, all religions, and being shut down, regardless, church, Buddhist temple, mosque, they're all shut down. Probably you heard about a lot of things about Tibet. You see, Tibetan people were not happy because their temple was shut down. But that's not only for Tibet, all over the country. You see, because of this. But afterwards, China, after the death of Mao, China started to change, start to take what we call open door policy and economic reform. So we interact with the rest of the world. You see, before that we were isolated. Rest of the world, because of that, China, when we welcome Western people, especially businessmen, come to China to do business, or business people to invest in China, you can be sure they were Jews. You see, then Jews come to China again. So this is another time. So in the 80s, Jews who came to Beijing from North America to pursue careers in business, journalism, diplomacy, or for academic studies, started to, when they live in China, come to Jewish holidays, they want to celebrate it. Now they did. So in the 80s, so like the Passover, that's the record, 25 Jews showed up at the Seder of 1980s. And then university, we did with the foreign teachers to celebrate Pesach, Hanukkah, and the Jewish New Year. You see, we did that too. Later on, I show you a picture. You know, we celebrated, but with Jewish people. That kind of celebration of Jewish holidays was part of, we understand, holiday of Judaism. You see. Then, in Beijing, BJC means Beijing Jewish Community, finally established in the late 80s. Okay, and of course they start, we say in the late 80s because they regularly celebrate Jewish holiday. We say regularly, almost every year. Then they start to find a place, get themselves organized, and then use place is rent the Capital Club of Beijing. Today is still there, you see, and to provide regular Shabbat services and celebrate holidays. And this is the first time since communists took over to China and new community established. They officially declare their name Kehila Beijing. You see, actually in Chinese, we give them a name by using Kaifeng Jews Yi Ci Lu Ye community. In Chinese they use that, but in English they said Beijing Kehila. So that would exist with understanding of this. And of course this is their Reform Judaism or belong to World Progressive Judaism. They use reconstructing prayer book, and then later on they have Sefer Torah and all this. The practice were given by Chinese government. You see, and this is a situation in Shanghai, the biggest industrial or commercial center in China in the middle of 90s. The first people who do business or studied whatever reason in Shanghai, they want to get organized. Organized, they formed a community. The formula they called Shanghai Jewish Community actually. But later on, when this Rabbi Greenberg was there, they have a full-time or professional rabbis. He is from Chabad movement. So that changed the course. So that gives you a little bit like history and then to see, but all this with Chinese government permission. You see, Chinese realize if we want to keep Jews in China, they need kind of holiday celebration, they need a house of worship, they need to give their children Jewish education to run the Jewish school. Then some Jews need kosher food. You see, the Chabad there was able to provide kosher meals for those people, including for many Orthodox Jewish travelers to China. They need this kind of supplies. So that's why China realized they do this in such a way. And then later on we said O'Hare, and synagogue when was in 1952, no services, now start to celebrate Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. You see, allow them to do over 1,000 people for that ceremony. That's the change. Now I show you that those who have been to Shanghai and Shalom Greenberg, Rabbi Greenberg's friend, I know him from day one he arrived in China. You see, because when Shanghai Jewish people re-established the community, and then Professor Pan Guang in Shanghai and myself were invited as honorary members. You see, because we do Jewish studies and we work together, so that if they did anything to get across with Chinese authorities, local authorities. And so when Rabbi Greenberg came, we were there, so community looks differently. Then in Shanghai, you know what they do? Chinese government realized it is important, you see, with Jewish experience, especially the refugees in China, they use that synagogue, Moshe, O'Hare Moshe, become a Shanghai Jewish Refugee Museum. It's very much visited. Now today, most Jewish travelers to China will go to that place. And now that place is enlarging. You see, government put, they told me 300 million to renovate that place, Shanghai. Next year, if you go there, you will see we're enlarged enormously. Okay, this is, and also in 1998, Shanghai municipal government spent over 60,000, $60,000 US dollar. That I put, because originally was in Chinese yuan, I converted to US dollar to repair the O'Hare. And in order for the visit of President Clinton to visit China, you see, and they understand this important because after 1989 Tiananmen issue, United States presidents did not visit China for 10 years. China wants to improve relations with Israel, so Chinese President Jiang Zemin visited America, finally being invited. Visit there, he invited President Clinton to visit China, but under the condition, President can visit any place that he chooses. So Clinton's government chose O'Hare. He's not Jewish, but his government made that position. So China prepared O'Hare for his visit. You see, later on after his visit, this O'Hare was open to Jewish communities. We hope government will return. Actually, this policy, I wrote a few papers for Chinese government about the policy. My suggestion, I said, after this we should give the return to Jews. Let them run it at their cost. Otherwise we have to keep it. Why? You cannot do it otherwise. You have repaired it, and the people know. And then, but so far, Chinese policy is that allow Jewish community in Shanghai borrow it, case by case. To begin with, it's very interesting. They allow Jews celebrate Rosh Hashanah, but not Yom Kippur. The reason they believe Yom Kippur is a religious holiday. Rosh Hashanah, every people have for New Year. You see, that's funny. We later when we talked to them, we said the Jews don't make this differentiation, but that happened. But anyway, you see the changes. You see, gradually, it takes time. Now, later on, I show you some other activities that happened at the O'Hare. You see, and so when Rabbi Greenberg got permission to work in Shanghai, it's not easy. It's rare case because, generally speaking, China not allow foreign priests or religious people to do religion in China. No Catholics or Protestant was recognized that you cannot invite priests to come to conduct services in China all year round. No. But with Judaism, because they understand. You see, in China you couldn't find it Chinese rabbi, and then also Jews do not try to convert other Chinese to Judaism. So that's how permission was given. It's very important, significant towards Judaism. You see, when they understand, this has become the policy, especially in Shanghai, later on in Harbin, some other places. Of course, new development is Chabad house was established. Very influential. Actually, Rabbi Greenberg was from Chabad house, but in Beijing, this Rabbi Simon Freud was there in 2001. I still remember he made a phone call to me from Beijing. He said, Professor Xu, hey, I'm Rabbi Simon. I'm in Beijing. You come to Beijing, come to my office. And at that time we also bring Jewish tools to in China. In Beijing, we always take them to reform Beijing Kehila. So he wants people to go there. Later on, we went there because if they want kosher food, that's a place to get a kosher food. And join the Shabbat services on Saturday. So that's how he came. You see, now he came to change and raise money, and with permission, they built a center. You see, and including open Danish kosher restaurant in Beijing. You see, look at this building. This is the Bet Yaakov Chabad house in Beijing. Huge, in a park. You see, they got permission to get this land. You see, it's a big permission. You see, that it shows when Chinese government allow Jews to build a center like this. Actually, they call it Chabad house, but inside the synagogue, and look at Danish kosher restaurant. They put the kosher restaurant here. You see, Yeah, now they do this in Beijing, Chabad. Brit, you see, this is Rabbi Simon. Yeah, he was pretty young when he first arrived. Now they're over almost 20 years. You see, 2001 and now almost 20 years. But in my mind, those people were not Chinese, but when they were sent there, they're determined to work there in their lifetime. You see, seems to me. You see, Rabbi Greenberg, for instance, when he first came with his wife, no children, but now he has 4 children. I joke him, all produced made in China. Yeah. This is, do you understand this? You see, this is for bridge and wedding. This is Beijing Chabad Orthodox wedding. You see, there was a reformed kind of study. I didn't show the picture. So as Jews now in more Chinese cities, there were many more Jewish communities actually established in China, chiefly by Chabad rabbi. Because you need someone can involve himself full time. All other businessmen, Jews in China, they couldn't do it. They need someone. You see, so Chabad make it possible. So now we could say all these places in China, already 10 Chabad houses in China. In the city, there were never Jews before, like Yiwu, right? To do business, commodities, all kind of commodities, shopping center, and there were big Jewish community merchants. They have Xu Xin next to Hong Kong. They have Chabad house. Now in Sichuan Chengdu, they have one. You see, and this is except the middle one actually, who was Lev Xiong, who played the important role, the head of Chabad house in Hong Kong. All people were he sent to China. The rest 6 were all sent by him. You see, so that's why I said Chabad Xu Xin, China. Okay. Then another issue is many buildings used by Jews restored it. Especially they put a plate to tell Chinese its history of this building. It's the way Chinese policy towards Jews and Judaism. Okay. This is, I think it's very important. And this is, we show the wedding in Ohel Rahel. You see, that's a big building, you see. The daughter was actually a current president of Shanghai Jewish community, Maurice. He was a French Jew, speak French. Actually, he came to China from Morocco with a French passport. He formed another center. That center became a French-speaking center. You see, so in Shanghai there were 3. One, Rabbi Greenberg, and one in Pudong, new area, that center. That center was run by his brother. He brought his brother family here. His brother, Abraham Greenberg, just unbelievable. Since he came, now he has 8 children. Yeah, last time when he invited me to speak there, and then I saw his wife again pregnant, already had 8. So I even asked her how can 8 children be taken care of. He said easy. That's how it comes. But anyway, this is a situation for Maurice's daughter who get married. That's being reported by Associated Press. See, they reported, I quote this, you see how the synagogue traditional way used, people were very happy, and of course Mr. Morris spent a lot of money for that wedding, but he said was doing it. It's because it's within 50 years. Never, 60 years actually. There's any Jewish wedding held in historic building in O'Hare, Rahel. Okay. And now in Shanghai, you see Sephardic chief rabbi in Shanghai, that's one. You see, I don't know any of you know him. I met him in Shanghai when he was there for that event. Later on, I met him in Israel. So, you see, this is now Jewish life. It's become regular. Okay. This one. Now even more. Holiday. This is celebrated. It's a big way. Look, on the square. So this is the Jewish life. That's, we say, has a lot to do with Chinese policy. They understand what Jewish people, they give permission to do it. You see, in publicly or among themselves. Now in Shanghai, they even built a mikveh. Never had a mikveh. They built this. Because the ritual bath is important. We have a community. And actually this one, I communicate with them because they ask why they did this. I told Chinese authorities why ritual bath is important, especially for women. If you have a regular life, they need to have this. And then finally they allow them to dig. Because they purchase the place, you dig to build something additional. You see, it's not easy. You see, so this is how it happened. In Harbin, also the case, and I give the example of how the Chinese government spent effort to renovate that cemetery, because part of the barrier that is important in Judaism or Chinese policy towards Jews and Judaism, you see, and build this. Cemetery, we see the main synagogue totally renovated, and schools restored, and then there's a square. If you go there, there's a square decorated in a Jewish way. You see many Star of David. This is a symbol for Jewish culture or for Jews. So in this one, this is a new one. You see how they renovated in a way. Of course, the same synagogue we saw that before. That is in old time picture taken different looking, but this is building remains as original. This is in cemetery, and this is the house of prayer, because for who died people in the cemetery, you have a synagogue modeled the old synagogue, much smaller in size. It looks like in picture it's same, but when actually you were there, much lower. But the same shape as old synagogue built in the beginning of 20th century. You see, this is also respect. Of course, one of the reasons because Ehud Olmert grandfather was buried there. You see, that government, renovated. Look how it looks today. You see, very well taken care of. And this is all government decision, not individual can do it. You see, no Jews in the country can do it without permission. You could see how they understand this issue. Of course, finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about teaching and research about Judaism. Because all this policy I've covered is Chinese policy towards expat. You see, not dealing with Chinese, but Jews who live in China, become the part of China. Of course, among them, there are many people married Chinese, and they have children, adopt children there. The Jewish community, they also adopt Chinese children. You see, so when I go to the synagogue, join their services or Shabbat dinner, always see some Chinese faces. You see, with those people, and actually, according to Chinese policy, only ordinary Chinese cannot go there. You see, but of course, those marry them, their children, their relatives, or people like me were considered scholars in Jewish studies were able to go there. Otherwise, they will kick you out. And Rabbi Greenberg, by the way, when he got permission to work in China, he was told cannot allow do services for any Chinese. You see, so that's how. Because Chinese were not Jews in a way, unless they were converted. But in China, there's no way, even if you want to become a Jew, but no way you can convert, go there. Richard, you have to go to Israel outside of China to do conversion, right? So in China, there's no way you could do it. But this is, this also involves Chinese policy. You see, so we are able to teach Judaism, of course, including Jewish history, Jewish culture, to Chinese college students, and also research on Judaism. This is for the better understanding, and also to give advice to Chinese government. I recall, since I'm in this field, I have written over 10 inside papers dealing with different kind of issues, which I come across, or people talk to me, want me to let Chinese leader know. I write a paper, I have a channel to send it through. You see, all this. And this is in our institute. You see, our students, and we have 2 Israeli Nobel laureates from Technion come to. Actually, this is one example that we keep inviting Jewish scholars. Some Jewish scholars work on Judaism, actually, and come to teach, give lectures in our university. You see the background? We do it. You see, and this is all related with Judaism. Yeah. So the symbols of Judaism. You see, people have a look at this. You see, there's a student try to. We have our students were required to understand or tell us each what's this, what's the function, or related with the Jewish life. You see, this is the way we teach. See, then we do this holiday. You see, because this is also permissible to do it. For our students, we invite Jews in Nanjing City, either students or those who teach there or work there, to join us together. We celebrate this way, so that the student could get some concrete idea what Jewish life or Judaism means. You see, this is what we do. So this is, now we have a whole army. This is all my students who have other professors who have students too. You see, quite a few among them become full professors now. I can tell you, you see, this one became full professor 8 years ago, and this one, top one, full professor. He become full professor and also deputy dean of Henan University in Judaism. All this, you see, this is from work in Tianjin. All this other MA student, but PhD student, most become teachers who teach to cover Judaism. You see, this is the one to do, and also we run seminar exhibits. You could see there's a seminar. In this is a really historic picture, because in the 90s, when I started to establish Center for Jewish Studies, I started to teach at Nanjing University, but I learned most universities in China never teach them. I had contact with those who teach world history, they never cover Jewish history, and those who teach Western civilization, world civilization, never mention Jews or Hebraic study. But the reason is when they were students, they never learned. That's true. When they never learn, how could they involved in their teaching? So I discussed with them, if we run seminar and invite you to come, and after you learn, are you willing to include it into your established courses at the various universities? The response was positive. That's why I invite those people, except two, those from Graz University, who become the president now, or probably now retired. And this one from Ohio, and came to teach, and all others, you see, vice president of Zhengzhou University, the curator of Beijing Museum, all these people who come to study. And some of them even wrote a textbook including chapter about the Jewish civilization or Jewish religion, actually. You see, this is a workshop we did, and this is we invite scholars to come to give lectures. And this is we had exhibition about Jews in China. This professor is very well known in China, who studied Silk Road, who knows Arabic, and he came to learn about this too, you see. And that's how things been done. And the publication is important. We see a few books, and Encyclopedia Today, Chinese edition. That's anti-Semitism, how and why, you see. And then history of Jewish culture, we give you a little bit more. Yeah, this is more. You see, all these books, Jewish topic related. Okay, this is many of them were dealing with what we call Judaism, Jewish belief, and also look at this, Master Thomas. You see, there were over 20 books, 10 volumes books covered this. You see, so this is American Judaism. It's already published over 10 years. You see. Okay, this is the final words, and then we say how China look at Judaism. This more or less reflects Chinese take the policy towards what Jews or Judaism in China. This is behind them. This is understanding to allow Chinese academia and to do Jewish studies. Thank you very much.